What's up? This video is a very special one because I will talk about acrylic paints and also how you can actually use them to the best. And in the background, as you can see, I did my sketch on the canvas. So basically, this depicts kind of a guardian angel floating in the atmosphere. And I think that's a really cool way to practice and also to explain to you how acrylic paints work. And some tip to the beginning, I wouldn't buy some of the cheapest acrylic paints from a discounter or such, because that way it's way harder learning or practicing with them. I mean, you can try them out for yourself, but I would always advise you to spend some more money for an established brand. So I do have my acrylic paints right here. You don't really need much colors. You can always blend up all the colors you do need. And if you don't know how to mix up color, you can always look it up. I really found myself looking up so many mixtures of colors on YouTube. So yeah, you will find definitely everything. And probably the most important thing about acrylic paints is that they are drying really fast. And that is why I do have a wet palette. So as you can see, I have a hydration tab on here. So basically you just pour water on it, it soaks itself, and you just basically put the colors, the acrylic paints onto them. That way the painting is not drying out and you really have time to work on the painting itself. So yeah, without losing any time, I would say we will start right from the beginning. So as you guys can see, the wet palette is of course wet. You have this hydration pad right here and you see it is soaked up with water. That way the acrylic paints don't dry out when you want to mix them or use them. So yeah, let's start painting. So guys, one thing you can do when you're painting the background with acrylic paints is you can actually spray your canvas with water, because that way the colors also don't tend to dry really fast on the canvas and you can blend them. In my example right here, I of course do it in pitch black because, as we know, the space is also pitch black. But for this area around here, I also want to blend it. That way I just let it dry on this layer and actually tend to do the other layer in the next step. So as you probably do notice, I actually do the lines with this little motion right here. When the paint is drying, the painting leaves some edges and these edges kind of give the drawing textures. You can really experiment and take advantage of that. However, you really have to look out for these spots, because when you actually paint it all over, just for the sake of just putting the color onto the canvas, these ridges actually can really confuse the viewer at the end. That's why it's always helpful to kind of think about what form and what shadows you really want to put at the end of the drawing. So if you take a brush with watered down paint right here and you just slap on it, you get these beautiful stars right here. So, like I said, acrylic paint is actually very fast drying, which is a huge selling point if compared to something like oil paints, because oil paints actually do take months to fully dry out. And with acrylic paint, you actually just take a week and it is fully dried out. You can actually work on the same painting or just continue with another painting, and you don't really have to throw this canvas onto your workspace in order for it to fully dry out. Also, you can actually layer unlimitedly on acrylic paint, which is actually pretty cool. You also don't really need expensive gear like paint thinner or such. You can actually just take water and water the acrylic painting down. Of course, there are other mediums you can use alongside with acrylic paint, but in my honest opinion, you don't really need them. Why I also do love acrylic paint is because it's so viable. You can actually paint any surface with it and it just sticks to it. Because acrylic paint dries in and another self, you actually don't really even need to prepare any surface. You can paint on canvas, on paper, on plastic, well, actually even on stones and wood. So acrylic painting is actually the best thing if you are a beginner and also if you are an expert, because the use case for it is unlimited. So as you guys can see, I am painting my painting in the background, and I also do use tools everyone has at home, like for example a sponge to just get smoother transitions. For that you either can spray your canvas with water, or you just can soak the sponge a bit in the water and just get these smooth transitions. Also, layering on acrylics is a must do. With oil paints, for example, you do have a very shining, bright, thick layer of paint onto the canvas. With acrylic paints, it actually dulls out a bit if you just let it dry. However, you can unlimitedly, like I said, layer on it. Even something like glazing, for example, when you thin down the painting with a lot of water so it kind of gets semi-transparent, you can always put that on your canvas to just get a lighting effect. And if you do have any questions for the whole process, or if you just are stuck on your own progress, just let me know in the comments down below and I will answer all of it. So yeah, enjoy the rest of it and we'll see us next time. Peace.